Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. With me, I have Rafael Marrero, the good doctor, in his sexy blue glasses. and I'm Dave Lowe. I'm the CEO of ISI Federal, as well as your GovBrief host today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. A little bit about Rafael Marrero and Company. You have a little bit of experience dealing with small businesses and helping folks in the federal contracting world, but we are also talking about just businesses in general. So give us an overview how you got started and why you do what you do, Rafa.
Sure. So first and foremost, former procurement executive with Fortune 500 experience. We've worked with thousands of small businesses throughout the United States and have launched supplier diversity initiatives across corporate America. Also extensive experience working in the government, in the federal government arena, for both service-disabled veteran-owned and 8A certified firms, specifically programs throughout Latin America. Former procurement executive, two-time Inc. 500 honoree ourselves, and we were also on America's Best 50 Workplaces. So we were honored with the inaugural award. I've served at the pleasure and leisure of the United States Hispanic Chamber as its subject matter expert on government contracting and also procurement readiness, federal certifications, and business plans. And I've had the pleasure of traveling the United States with my good friend here, David Lowe, who is known in the government contracting circles as the token gringo when he joins the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and has traveled, has walked the halls of Congress with me with delegations from the USHCC. We have a 100% success rate in helping folks obtain 8A women-owned, service-disabled, and HUB-zone certified certifications for their small businesses. So we can provide you with the necessary elements to help you become procurement ready in order to launch your practice successfully in the federal government. And that includes the socioeconomic certifications, branding you the right way so that you look good on paper and look good on the web, and also have the necessary financing and the training that you need in order to launch your practice.
And I do believe that we're going to be talking a little bit about financing today, as a matter of fact. We'll get to that in just a minute. A little high-level overview of ISI Federal. We've been doing this since 2009, helping federal contractors. And since then, we've helped book over $480 million in direct and indirect sales that goes with sub to prime and prime. And we have a lot of intelligence, not going to go into a whole lot of detail about that, but we provide proactive marketing efforts. And we actually leverage GovBrief, like you are involved in today, with an industry briefing on this PPP2 loan program. But engaging the buyers and getting your information out there is what we do. Today, we are talking about if you are a federal contractor, we are talking, you have your core capabilities, you need sales and marketing. That's our lane that we do. Contract vehicles, that there's places for that, compliance, and then also funding and your certifications and all the pieces that revolve around that and your capabilities create and effectively help you win federal contracts. A quick disclaimer, this event is not affiliated with SBA or any other agency, and any participation by government personnel, if there's folks here that engage, you can engage, and it is not an indication, an endorsement of a purchase for anybody or anything else. Just want to make sure you know that that's the case. As far as the briefing controls are concerned, you can make Rafael bigger or smaller, and change your settings up in that upper corner there. And you can also change the settings for the presentation so that everything works. As far as participating, you can chat, you can raise your hand, and you can submit questions, and we will do our best to be able to answer those. A lot of the questions that came in beforehand, I think, will be answered. There's a couple of weirdo questions that we will get to if we can. If not, we will respond to you directly. You can also reach out to info@rafaelmarrero.com. That'll be down at the bottom all the time. If you want to communicate with Rafael and his team outside of this personally, you can. The objective here is to be the go-to resource and assist in PPP loan application and business development resources. That's what you do, Rafa, right?
Exactly. We help you get your ducks in a row, just as our corporate logo clearly shows. We help you marshal the necessary resources so that you can launch your federal practice successfully and penetrate the federal government space with a good plan and a good solid plan of attack and understanding the key elements that you need. You're going to need the financing, and you're going to also need resources in order to do that and get it done right. So that's what we're here to provide today.
That's fantastic. And I'm glad, I'm always great to work with you, Rafael. And now we're going to get into it. Let's talk about this whole PPP2 loan or PPP loan, PP2, whatever it is they're saying it is in the second round. Tell us what it is and how it works.
Well, we call it PPP DOS in Miami, right, Dave? So,
right.
Okay, so the PPP, or the Paycheck Protection Program, and its new version, the PPP2, is part of the Economic Aid to Hard-Hit Small Businesses, Nonprofits, and Venues Act, which was signed into law December 27th of this last year. And then there are $908 billion under this program, so almost $1 trillion. And almost a third of that, Dave, it constitutes help for small businesses in the form of financing through a new infusion of capital for this PPP program, which has been very successful during its first round. First round offered about 50 million employees assistance. So many businesses received help from the Small Business Administration to keep their doors open, basically, and keep people on staff, so on their payroll. So the new Payment Protection Program loans, the PPP2 loans, are available effective now. In fact, applications were open just yesterday on the 11th. Tomorrow on the 13th, a new round of applications will be available for those that received funding in previous rounds, but I just wanted to make sure that you understood that. The loans are available through March 31st, or unless the funds that have been appropriated run out. So it's important to understand that you must act now, because there's going to be a long list of folks wanting to get very low, so cash at a very low cost of access to capital, because it's a 1% loan. So next slide, David.
You bet.
So let's talk about who qualifies. It's very important, right? The PPP applicants must have been in business. And this is one of the key questions that we get all day long. If I was in business, if I started my firm after February 15, do I qualify? And the answer is no. You must have been in business as of the moment the pandemic emergency or the state of emergency was declared under federal rules. So that date has been defined as February 15th of 2020. And you must have had at least a PP1 loan where the full amount of such loan was utilized or will be utilized prior to the disbursement of the PPP2 loan. So if you were previously approved for a loan and qualified for a loan under the PPP1 or the first version of the PPP, it's important that you must show that the full amount of the loan has been utilized or will be utilized prior to the new loan being asked or being solicited, okay? You must have also used the proceeds of the PPP1 loan only for eligible expenses under the existing Paycheck Protection Program rules. Next slide, please. So very important, 60% at a very minimum of your funds must have been used.
Wait a second, Rafa, we're going to ask a question.
Okay.
You need to answer all three of these as correct for you to qualify. So let us know where you guys are in the process. Were you in business before February 15th? You had a PPP loan and utilized the funds or will utilize those funds. And I have used those PPP ones for eligible expenses, because those are the things that will wind up getting you. We have a couple folks with their hand raised. I'm going to get, we're going to get to some questions as well. I want you, what if you didn't take a PPP loan?
Well, if you didn't take a PPP1 loan because you missed out on the deadline, you can now apply for your first loan.
Okay, very good. We probably should have included that one on there. We will make sure. Go ahead and click that. We'll make sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, very good. So if you had, you're right, Aaron, you're right. If you had a PPP loan. So if you didn't, that's okay. All right. So we're going to give you another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and boom. So I'm not going to share the results. We're just going to keep on pressing on. We will get those things. Let's talk about who's eligible.
Okay, so the first round, Dave, something very interesting happened. The eligibility criteria was defined with a threshold of 500 employees, right? Per location in many cases when there were franchises. So now the focus is going to be truly small businesses, okay, and also those in the hospitality sector. So the business must have less than 300 employees. Now, if your primary NAICS code, your North American Industrial Classification System code, which is the 6-digit code that appears in section B, as in Bravo, of your corporate tax returns, such as your 1120 or 1120S, that's what defines your economic activity and what your firm does for a living, right? So if that code begins with the number 72 as a prefix, then the 300 employee limit is calculated per location. This is very important because the food services sector was one of the most hit the hardest, I should say, by the pandemic because people were forced to shut down due to sanitary reasons. They could not open up for business, and many were forced to do just carry out and delivery and closed at all times in some cases. So it's important. So you have a 72 prefix and you have multiple locations. The 300 employee limit is calculated per location, okay? Mm-hmm. So the business types include sole proprietorships, self-employed, LLC, corporations such as S corporations or stock corporations, partnerships, and not-for-profits. So not-for-profits qualify this time. And it's very, very important that you take that into account, okay? Now, businesses must be able to show that they had a 25% decline in revenues and income for any quarter over 2020 compared to the same quarter year over year ago. So let's say that you take Q2, the second quarter, right, of 2020, and you compare it to Q2 of 2019, you must demonstrate with income statements and other mechanisms that you experience a 25% reduction in income in order to qualify for this new round of funding. Okay, that's very important, Dave.
And it's any quarter compared to any quarter. So you could have rocked like Q3, but had a heavy decline in Q2, which most companies did, right? So correct. Just demonstrating in Q2 or Q3, right? So all those. So very good.
Yeah. And in case you were started in Q1 of 2020, right, you must show that the other quarters of 2020, you had a decline, a 25% decline compared to, so you can compare 2 quarters over 2020, but you must have been incorporated in Q1 of 2020 in order to show that, okay?
Right. So there's a couple questions about this. Is this gross income or net income?
Gross income.
Gross income. Can you compare Q1 2020 versus 2019, Q1 to Q1? You can.
Yes.
And it says SBA application refers to second quarter, correct? But you can do any quarter to any quarter, right, Rafa?
That is correct.
How does this work with a new business? Great question.
Well, I mean, if you started out, I think we just covered the ones that were started in 2020, but you need to have been started in before the February 15th cutoff, Dave. Mm-hmm. That's very important, because if you were not an existing entity, then you started a business after the pandemic. This was intended, the spirit here is intended and aimed at corporations that had issued, that were in existence and then were impacted. Their operations were adversely impacted as a result of the pandemic, but were already in existence. You follow me?
Yep, I agree. I understand. So what happens, this is a great one. What happens if there were zero revenues in Q2 2019 and zero revenues in Q2 2020? That's 0 to 0.
I don't think we can show a 25% reduction. I mean, it's zero change, right? I mean,
it's zero change.
Yeah. I mean, for all intents and purposes, that business is inexistent. It may just be a business plan in the making, but the government wants to see a tax return, wants to see income statements. Yeah.
And it's, Stephanie has the same question. The answer is, it is based on 2025 gross. It's your gross.
Yeah, if we said that.
Yeah. All right. So
okay, want to go to
there's a whole bunch of things. We will get to some more of those questions. All right. So do you believe that you're eligible? Well, hopefully this one asks a little bit better. Let's see if you think you're eligible. Are you eligible? Do you have less than 300 employees? And answer this the same way if you start with 72, right? It's per location. I can show a decline. All right. So you need to answer all these, right? I am one of those. You're not a large business, right? I have 300 employees. I can show a decline for at least a quarter of 2020 through 2019. So this should be
someone saying that it doesn't allow them to select all three.
Oh, crap. That's what happens when we do things on the fly, Mr. Rafael. But we will make sure that it counts for you. All right. So if that's not working properly, go ahead and answer one of those, and we'll make sure that we'll count you as eligible. All right. So coming up next, your payroll and payout. This is always one of the biggest questions that we have. And we'll go ahead and end this polling in 3, 2, 1, and boom. All right. So for payroll and payout.
Yeah, so it's very important to understand that your loans are based on the average number of employees per pay period for the previous 12 months, right? So the SBA is going to calculate it based on that, so on the average number of employees. Also, they're based on the average number of employees per pay period for the previous 12 months. The loans are generally 2.5 times the average monthly payroll, subject to a maximum of $2 million. So that number will be, let's say that it's $100,000 a month for your payroll. You multiply that out by 2.5. There's the amount of the PPP loan that your company would technically qualify for. Now, in case that your prefix is 72, then in that case, you would qualify for, get this, if you're in the hospitality or food service industry where meals are served, you would qualify for 3.5 times the average monthly payroll, capped at $2 million, okay? So that's available for those businesses, specifically for restaurants, Dave, people that serve food. They were hit very, very hard by the pandemic. So that's why that adjustment was made under this new rule. Okay. Now check your tax returns so that you can see if your accountant has been using the correct NAICS code. Hopefully he has been, and you'll be able to qualify for that under this new program.
Fantastic. Come on, you can do it. There you go. All right. So real quick, another poll. Now this one I know will work right. So we'll launch it. Does your NAICS code start with 72 or not?
Right. That's
an easy one for everybody.
Yeah, you have a 50-50 chance of getting this right. So work with me here.
Oh, geez. All right. So we'll make sure we get a decent amount here. While we got you, while they're doing this, do you need to use standard quarters, or can you use any 3-month term for 2020 compared to 2019? For example, March.
Yeah, these are based on how you file your tax return. So the quarters as defined by your fiscal year, right? So some people have a start and end date, which does not coincide with the calendar. So it's based on your tax return, quarters, right?
So business formed late in 2019, operational in March 2020, shut down by COVID in 2020, never had revenue, just expenses, not eligible, right?
Yeah, it sounds like not eligible. I mean, if they were started in 2019, late like November, December, and they didn't have a dime of revenue, that's going to be a hard case.
Yep.
I mean, one could technically make, so did they file tax returns for 2019? Are they showing any revenues? It doesn't sound like they were. So this sounds like a case of one that may not qualify.
Gotcha. All right. So people are done voting. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. But boom.
Okay.
So there you have it. Most folks are not in that neg scope, but that's okay. So let's talk about the limitations. Some of this has to deal with the Chinese participation in your company, and I'm hoping most folks here that are small businesses don't fall into these categories. But take us through it.
Yeah, and again, this is not an anti-Chinese clause. It's against members of the Chinese Communist Party. I want to be clear on that. The borrower cannot be owned by more than 20% by a Chinese or Hong Kong company, there's a long list of companies that have affiliations to the Chinese Red Army and the Chinese Communist Party, or a company that has significant operations in China or Hong Kong. The borrower cannot have any board members that is a Chinese resident, because several folks have been circumventing this, and that's why this was put into place. So there's been issues with the stock market and also corporations owned by Chinese nationals and that's how they've circumvented some of our rules. The borrower cannot receive an advance for the program. This is very important. Set aside for the shuttered performing venue. So if you received another grant or an advance from any other program under the law, you don't qualify for the PPP2. Okay, you can't double dip. There's no double dipping. Okay, the covered period for the loan is between 8 and 24 weeks. And let me explain why that is so important. You need to use at least 60% of the total dollar amount for payroll related expenses, and the other 40% for permissible expenses, which include in this case PPE even, and for businesses that have been shuttered, any type of if your business was impacted by civil unrest or by rioting, then you can cover those expenses under that 40% category, Dave. But what happens now is, let's say that you do your calculations and 8 weeks is not enough to cover the 100% of the loan, then you can calculate using a 24-week calculation method, okay? To make sure that you reach 100% of your permissible expenses, and so that you reach 100% of your loan that way and submit it for forgiveness, okay? So that's very, very important. Mm-hmm. And then the forgivable amounts received pursuant to round one are excluded from the borrower's gross receipts calculation. So if you receive money from PPP1, you cannot, that's excluded in the calculation for your gross receipts. Okay.
Fantastic. That's important stuff. Right.
Yes, sir.
That's very important. So let's just make sure, just for everybody, that we do not have any, this will disqualify you right away if you have more than 20% Hong Kong Chinese. I do not have any Chinese residents either. So there you go. Let us know about those. Pretty sure that most folks here are falling into that category, but we want to make sure that we get to it. If you get to a no fast, that's an okay thing. You want to get to yes, hopefully that you're eligible and you can get it. So that's what we want. And we're going to give you another 5, 4, 3, 2. I promise it's painless, especially this question. This question is especially painless. We do have a couple questions that we will get to. And good thing is most people are in that category. So let's talk about this real quick before we get into the next part. Can PPP2 loans be forgiven like PPP1?
Yes, these are forgivable loans.
Okay.
Assuming, number one, that you follow the requirements of the rules, that you use the loans as stated. You can't go out and buy a Lamborghini. You can't.
What?
Yeah, I'm out of here, right? So you can't buy a Lambo. And it's intended to keep payroll, to meet payroll demands. So the intent is to keep your employees gainfully employed, keep them on your payroll, or to rehire them back into your payroll, to make sure that the unemployment numbers don't grow. That's the spirit of this program.
And we're going to get to some of the limitations. I think we may answer some of these questions here. There's a lot of different ones. So number of loans, only one PP2 loan can be attained by any borrower, right?
That's correct. Only one. And then the covered period, no less than 8 weeks after the origination. So that's the date that shows up on your loan agreement document with the SBA. So that date is in fact the loan origination date. You don't get to choose and pick and choose on that. It's a date reflected there, and no more than 24 weeks after the origination. That's that 24-week period that we discussed. Okay.
And if you have
also
PPP1, right? If you have a PPP1, then you have to have the same certification, right?
That is correct. Very important, as we stated earlier, you need to show that you've used your PPP1 funds in the manner prescribed by the program or as indicated under the rules, under federal rules. Also, that by the time you request the funds for PPP2, that you will have used these funds, right, in the manner stated by the program guidelines. So it's important to understand this. Also, if you've already run out of funds and you've seen a 25% decline in revenues, then that makes you a good candidate for this new program as well. Dave, if you want to go back for one point that I need to make here in the previous slide, sorry.
I go, sorry, hang on, I'll find it.
So economic necessity, no, the one before the poll, I'm sorry, right there. So, okay. The borrower must make the certification made in connection with the PPP1 loan. In other words, your current economic conditions make this a necessary loan, okay? This is not, I repeat, a business line of credit at a super duper low price. It's not, you're not bargain shopping the government. This is a program intended to help small businesses in need. Very, very important in order to keep their payroll open and to meet their payroll demands, okay?
Oh, hold on a second. I need to edit this poll real quick, if I could, because we do want to know if you've signed. You have. One second. I will ask this question. You can answer this as well. Are state grants excluded? Natalie wants to know. So if you've gotten grants from a state, what does that mean?
That's a good question, Natalie. What happens is, there were programs that were implemented after the PPP1 loan took effect, and once they closed, which was August 8th, for companies that didn't make the cutoff, and there were state and local grants made available or afforded to small businesses that fell into that category. This new program, I believe, does not have an exclusion clause for people that may have applied there. So we need to see which terms and conditions apply to the specific grant if you received one, to see if that would preclude you or force you to pay off a loan, a forgivable loan that you qualified for, or a grant, or if that would preclude you from participating in this new round. As long as you didn't get funds from the shuttered program, which was discussed earlier, then you may qualify for this new round. Either way, we welcome the opportunity to speak to you, Natalie, and to look at the terms and conditions of the grant that you may have received.
Right. Yes, you will get a copy of the slideshow while you have not applied for a PPP2 loan, if you have or not. We have a few people that have, so that's good news. But let us know if you have applied or not for a PPP2 loan. So, Caroline, this is probably one that you want to take specific with Rafael. Will the loan be 100% forgivable, or if we have fewer employees at the end of the covered period versus the beginning of the covered period? You mentioned that it's done by average, right?
Yeah, it's done by average, and also we need to look at some of your permissible expenses to see if you can offset that with the 40% bracket. Some people use it all for employees, others use it for a combination of employees and permissible expenses. So, we can take a look at that in detail for you there's no obligation, and we can have a free consult with you one-on-one, set up by my team.
Right. And to reiterate, if you don't have a 25% loss in any 2020 quarters, you are not qualified.
That is correct. You do not automatically qualify for the PPP2 just because you were previously approved for the PPP1. I want to underscore that.
Let me find Eric's questions, because somebody said, if you're in a cash basis taxpayer, do you use cash basis financial statements, or can you use accrual for the 25% drop?
Accrual or cash accounting really does, it's based on, if the actual income that you received. The method of accounting is not important right now.
All right. So get rid of that poll for everybody, and we'll get on to the next part, which is using the funds. I think this is going to answer some of the questions too.
Mm-hmm. Here we go. So payroll, very, very important at the very top of the list. No less than 60%, please, of the funds must be used to retain, rehire, or keep your personnel. You can also cover rent, work-related protective personal equipment, PPE, such as face masks, the face shields, the COVID shields, the acrylic barriers for your stores, any type of disinfectant gels. Some folks have to spend a lot of money to do this, and some folks were actually even charging a premium, like a 5% surcharge for PPE equipment and things like that, or PPP expenses, such as in restaurants. So worker PPE, the loan interest, you may also include your utilities and payments to your suppliers. Other operational expenses, such as billing and accounting functions, inventory, payment to repair property damage as a result of civil unrest, not covered by insurance. You can't double dip, folks. If you got an insurance check and you filed a claim, you got a check, you cannot also qualify for this help to cover those expenses. You can't claim them, I should say. Expenses related to business improvements made to comply with safety, not because you wanted to add another office or because you wanted to build additional infrastructure, but predicated upon safety protocols, right? So if you needed to add barriers, acrylic barriers, modify your points of ingress and egress at your business, separate cubicles out, things like that, right? I'm just thinking out loud. Also, payments for software that facilitates business operations. A lot of folks had a brick and mortar presence prior to this and were forced to go online as part of their business continuity planning and continuity of operations plan. And so that investment right there can also be claimed as a legitimate bona fide investment. You need to have receipts and all that. Okay?
Including cell phones as well.
Well, any equipment, right? I mean, let's say that you ran your business from a brick and mortar location, Dave. I mean, chances are, if you're in business today, you had a cell phone. Right? So I'm not saying go out and buy yourself the iPhone 12 and expense that to the PPP expenses. No, that's not what we're saying. Let's say you had a brick and mortar location, you were forced to go online, Zoom, other platforms, equipment that you needed, anything to virtualize your environment and be able to cover your expenses, be able to offer your services. Those would be legitimate expenses. Okay, next slide, please.
We already have you. This is a great question. Have you applied? Have you gotten forgiveness for your PPP1 loan if you have one? If not, and you're waiting response.
This is very important, Dave, because most folks applied for their PPP in March of last year.
Yep.
There's a 10-month period, right? They need to start applying, and the banks take 2 months, can take up to 60 days to approve that request, because it goes first to the SBA. There's an SBA application number, and then there's a lender loan number, right? You need to get the approval on the nod from the SBA. That goes to the local bank, and then your loan is forgiven. And so if you started your PPP1 loan application and received funds last March, you need to start the PPP loan forgiveness application right away. because it takes a while. It takes a while. And I don't know if you folks remember, but it took a long time to get PPP loan approvals last year because of the sheer volume of folks applying. The servers were just down from tens of millions of loan applications that the SBA was processing during the first 47 days of the pandemic.
Yep. So another couple seconds with that, and we're going to end that. And I'm going to ask a couple questions while we have them here. Let's see. Can federal taxes paid by employer also be used? Also Medicare, Social Security paid by employer as an expense? Apparently.
So payroll, you need to look at your 941 and your 940, your statements with your accountant. And there are certain permissible payroll related expenses that are tagged to this application, right? Your interest rates can also be applied. So that may be one of the criteria that may qualify under that one bucket under the 60% or more. I mean, if you have more than 60%, minimum 60% for payroll related expenditures.
And a lot of folks are interested in the forgiveness part, as you would imagine. So let's talk about that.
Sure. So the first step is you need to contact your lender, not the SBA. Step one is to contact your lender and complete the correct form, right? So depending on the dollar amount that you may have received from the PPP-1 loan, you can either use the 3508, the SBA form 3508EZ as in Echo Zulu, or the EZ form, and the standard form 3508S as in Sierra, or a lender equivalent. So if you got less than $25,000 or $50,000, chances are that there's a simplified method for this. It gets a little convoluted when it's over $150,000, Dave. And anything over a certain threshold over that is automatically audited, just so you know. We've processed PPP loans in excess of $1 million and change for clients that are in the janitorial industry and other services industries. And there's a lot of paperwork that goes into that. So if you have anything over $150,000, you should seriously consider seeking professional advice and help to make sure that the full amount qualified funds are forgiven by the bank.
And David asked the question, so are the banks ready?
The banks are ready as of yesterday for, and that was a tongue-in-cheek comment, right? So as of yesterday for the new applicants,
maybe
PPP to new applicants, those procedures and rules have already been released and are available. And they started taking applications yesterday. Tomorrow, they start taking applications for PPP2 folks that were previously approved. Okay, so those that need to justify getting additional funding. The 3508EZ and the 35S are shortened versions of the application for borrowers who meet specific requirements. Okay, so your lender can provide specific details or further details on this.
Yep. Yeah, you're going to need to be if you already have your lender, you're going to be reaching out to them.
Yes, sir.
Documentation rules the day, I do believe.
Yep, and we're paperwork experts, so you're going to need your payroll. You're going to need to provide documentation for all the payroll periods that overlapped with the covered period or the alternative payroll covered period. Secondly, the non-payroll related expenditures, such as for expenses that were incurred or paid during the covered period, and showing that obligations or services existed prior to February 15th, 2020. They're going to ask for copies of your lease agreements. They're going to ask for copies of your utility bills, proof that you're actually there at the location that you claim to exist in, not just a PO box. Very important, right? If you're claiming, you don't want to do that. So these are federal funds, for folks. You need to play by the rules and be right. Also, documentation to support health insurance. And here's to the earlier question, right? And retirement expenses incurred as part of payroll expense. For example, a statement from insurance or a retirement company for retirement funds, any type of cafeteria plan, IRA, 401k, etc. Next slide, please.
Yep.
And then the third and fourth part are the components that you need to submit the application, the form, and documentation to your lender. Typically, they have an online portal where these forms are uploaded. It is highly recommended that you do not submit an incomplete, non-compliant, non-conformant application, because it will be tossed and then you'll get to the back of the queue. And then continue to communicate with your lender throughout the process. So as you can see, it sounds like 4 very basic steps, but there's a lot of follow through and follow up and paperwork involved, specifically with the higher dollar amount PPP loans. So it's highly recommended that you seek professional advice or assistance from a firm that does this for a living.
That's opposed to seeking professional help for something that
Some of you may need both, right?
I'm sorry, guys. All right. So will the SBA audit standard set at $2 million apply per loan, or the aggregate of both loans? It's
any loan in excess of $2 million is automatically audited. Chances are, if you have multiple loans from different businesses totaling $2 million, that you're also a potential candidate for an audit like that.
So here's one from Jack. What if your corporation is like a hotel, or you're part of a controlled group that rolls up into a parent corporation for filing taxes? What would you say to that, Rafa?
My first question is, how were you even approved? I welcome an opportunity to speak to Jack offline to learn it. It sounds like a very complicated application. So, but we can talk about this offline.
And let's see. PPP 2.0, what the FTE starting point will be used, the date of 2/15 or 1/21. That's going to be you're anonymous. You're going to have to reach out to Rafael for that one, because we're going to have to work on that.
Yep.
What is it meant by how is significant operations in China and Hong Kong determined? It is by ownership, right? You mentioned
ownership and location. I mean, if you are, this was intended for U.S. based businesses, right? Not for a business owned by an American, or partly owned by an American, partly controlled by an American working from China. That's not the spirit of the help that was put in place.
Right. And we received money from the CARES Act. Do we still qualify?
Well, if you receive PPP 1, you receive funds from the CARES Act. Yes, you do qualify, and we need to see the specifics. So, was it an economic injury disaster loan? 30-year loan with a 3.75% interest rate, or is it the Paycheck Protection Program round 1 fund? So either one of those would qualify as CARES Act funding. This new round, you may also qualify as long as we can demonstrate that you've A, played by the rules, and B, experienced a 25% decrease in revenues for any one quarter compared in 2020 compared to 2019.
Are there going to be payroll limits per employee? For example, are we excluding any personnel over 100 grand? Well,
$100,000 has always been the ceiling for calculation purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So for reimbursement purposes, the maximum dollar amount that they would reimburse anyway, or consider, would be up to $100,000. You also could not have given yourself a very healthy raise when you got the Payroll Protection Program and fired employees, and then said, look, we met our goal, because it doesn't work that way. They're going to compare the numbers in your quarterly employee records year over year. So you can't just fire everyone and give yourself a raise and say, look, I used the money for payroll. It's not the way it works either.
And we have a bunch of folks that chatted in as well. Let's see. Can you claim a necessary plumbing repair not related to COVID? It can be safety protocol, but not COVID.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. Yeah.
That's a stretch.
Yeah.
And Jeff says, my bank has put forgiveness applications on hold. Congratulations, Jeff. Sorry. So there's going to be a lot of challenges, right? Because you only have so many resources at a bank. And if now you have the PPP2 loans coming through, then their focus is going to be PPP2 loans, getting them out, not as opposed to forgiveness. My thinking, right? Wouldn't you say?
Well, Dave, we could, and this is a great point that he brings up, actually. If you have PPP1 funds and you need to seek forgiveness, we can help you with that. But
Okay,
in addition to that, we may initiate a second round of, to seek funding if we can demonstrate that you meet the criteria. And the government has not stated that you need to actually request funding from the same bank. I have not seen that anywhere. So there is some flexibility, and we have a large number of organizations that we deal with. We're vendor agnostic. We're about the client.
gotcha. Hold on one second. So the next slide is going to be one of the slides I think people are really interested in for filing your application. Here's some SBA links for you. I'm going to put this in the chat to everybody so you can see this. This is the link to the SBA program. Nothing super sexy about it. It just goes right to that. So there's a lot of individual questions here. We're going to do our best to be able to answer what we can. And I am going to open it up in a few minutes for folks. But before we do, we want to know what you need Rafael for, because as Rafael mentioned earlier, you got to get this stuff submitted. But you mentioned this, Rafael, you have the ability to help with PPP1 forgiveness. You have the ability to help with PPP2 application submission, and you also do all kind of other things for small businesses on a regular basis. So we want to make sure that you get with the information that you need from Rafael. All right. So we'll keep that open, and I'm going to ask a bunch of questions while you guys are asking, are waiting or doing this. So payroll costs using average monthly payroll for 2019 or 2020. Is it your choice? Average payroll costs.
Well, average payroll, you need to compare
both.
Yeah, compare both. Yeah.
All right. So if I used $100,000 amount for PPP1 and have made less in 2020, can I still use the same amount for PPP2 since my quarterly was decreased? Not sure what that means.
Yeah, not
Eric,
sure.
we're gonna have to figure that one out.
But again, there's a free consultation, so they should take us up on that.
Would total sales or total income apply to gross income?
Well, sales, right?
Sales.
Yeah.
If
We're talking about the company. We're talking about the company's sales.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. If we received approval from PPP1 but did not show a loss or profit, will they approve a PPP2 loan?
If you cannot demonstrate that you sustained a 25% decrease in revenues
in one quarter,
in one of the quarters, then you would not qualify.
We've heard that if you apply for PPP2, all right, so you cannot also receive the Save Our Stages grant, and that's the SOS grant. You mentioned this before.
Yeah, there's no double dipping. There are grants that are designed by, here's why. Some of these grants are covered with CARES Act funding. So there are flow down provisions and monies that were afforded to local, state government, and also county municipalities. For example, Miami-Dade County had programs for restaurants. So if you received this funding and they were forgivable loans, you can't go back and ask for more PPP funds, right? They actually gave the money to people who did not get the PPP funds because the time ran out or the funds were elapsed in some cases.
Yep. And does Rafael help with nonprofit companies?
Yes, we do. In fact, we help a great number of nonprofit organizations, both faith-based and other organizations that offer community services. So yes, we do. Quite a few of them, actually. Quite a few. Yeah.
All right. And PPP2 loans, can this round be used for sole proprietor payroll?
Yes.
Yep. To apply PPP1 now, do we still need to have 25% decline in gross income?
You can apply for PPP1 now. you can apply for loan forgiveness because PPP1 expired August 8th of last year. So you need to ask for forgiveness now, the forgiveness. You can apply for a PPP2, which is the new program.
And if you started a home-based business in 2020, are you eligible? No, you are not. You have to have had it before February 15th.
Well, if you started a business in Q1, right?
Yeah.
Q1 of 2020, and it's a home-based business, and you were generating revenue, and let's say that you had all your ducks in a row, and you launched the business, and you were generating revenue, and then COVID hits, and you were impacted by that. That's
August. She said August. So
no, I'm sorry, I didn't hear August. Sorry.
Yeah. Does PPP2 look at your personal credit? I had perfect credit during PPP1, but there you had an issue. Yeah. So unfortunately, I need to pay off my credit card, which brought down my score.
Right. So the SBA Office of Disaster Assistance, ODA, ran credit reports on EIDL recipients. I have not received any indication that they also ran credit reports for the PPP.
Okay.
And in fact, I worked with companies that were registered non-permanent residents that were here on investor visas that received funding, and so they could not run a background. I mean, a social security number credit report on them.
Okay. I'm going to open this up. So I'm going to open up the line so we can talk. Do not turn this into a diatribe of any sorts.
Dave, yeah, that's going to be hard to control. That's a big crowd.
All right. Well, there's only a few here that have their hands raised. So hold on one second.
Why don't you unmute individually instead of opening it up? Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
So Hanoi Martinez, are you there? Hanoi? I've asked to unmute there. How about David March? You there? David, you need to unmute yourself, I think.
Let me unmute.
And Ray Alt.
Okay.
There we go. Got those guys. Let's see what happens. David lowered his hand, I guess.
Hello?
Hello, who's this?
This is David.
Hey, David. What you got for us?
So I received a notice from my bank that my PPP round one loan was fully forgiven. Does that mean that I automatically qualify or meet all the requirements in terms of what's needed for the second round if I can demonstrate a 25% reduction in revenue over any one quarter?
It means that you're off to a good start, David, meaning that you've already fulfilled one obligation and that your funds have expired. So that's part of the requirements right there. If you can also demonstrate that you sustained the 25% reduction in income as stated earlier by you, then that makes you a good candidate for this PPP2 funding round.
There you go,
Okay.
Dave.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks much. Ray.
Yes, I had asked a question about does full-time versus part-time employee make a difference in terms of payroll claims?
No, in fact, you can qualify with part-time, full-time, and also agency staff under this new rule.
And what about what if the owner of the business, 100% shareholder owner of the business, is one of the employees claiming, a payroll claim?
That's not a problem, Ray. In fact, the majority of the small businesses in America have less than an average of 1 to 4 employees. I mean, that's what the small business economy is all about.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Let's see. Let's try Hanoi again. I just hit you, and then we'll also do Hanoi, you there?
Yes, no, it's a mistake. Sorry.
Oh, it's a mistake? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then you had the fastest, easiest question of the day. All right, fantastic. Deborah, let's see. Deborah Hall. Where are you at, Deborah? You there? I'm going to ask you to, whoa, hold on a second. Man, this thing moves around when you do this. All right, Deborah, are you there? I could see her. I'm not sure if that's working or not. And then Janet, let's try Janet. Janet, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Janet.
Hi, how are you?
We're all right. Trying to maintain control.
I'm sitting next to her. I'm gonna ask the question.
Okay.
Our PPP one loan was structured like the average business, 2.5 times our average monthly payroll. When the loan was completed and the funds were dispersed, at that time rules were there were some guidelines and rules that were still kind of evolving with the first round of the PPP loans. And come to find out, we should have applied as a seasonal business, which we really are. Can we do that for the PPP2 loan now?
I don't see any provisions for seasonal businesses, but what specific industry are you in?
We're actually a general contractor, but we only deal with schools. So really our spring and summer, we are slammed.
Right.
We've run the number. We actually ran the numbers last night, and we do fall in line with, more than 66.6% of our business is done in that 6 months period of time versus the other 33 in the rest of the year. But in the example they gave online, it was talking about like January to June and then July to December. Really, it's the first quarter is slow. The second and third quarter, we hammer it out. And then the fourth quarter, we're slow. Would that be okay?
Go ahead, press on.
Okay. All right. And then we just basically look at a 12-week period within that time frame. I have the dates like May. I don't have the dates in front of me. And we would use that then, I guess.
Correct. And have all the necessary backups to support that. That would be very important.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.
Hey, you bet. All right, let's see. Who else we got? We got those guys. I think we got everybody there. Maybe Debbie. Debbie, did we get you? Debbie. And I'm going to also see, there's a bunch of folks with their hands raised. I don't know. We're not going to be able to get to everybody. So here's the deal. If you have questions, make sure you can shoot them to Christina at rafaelmarrero.com or info at rafaelmarrero.com, because both of those go to the doctor where he can certainly help with that. So PPP1 forgiveness, PPP2 applications, and just like it says, free 15-minute individual consult with the team. And they will be able to help you throughout that process. And I tell you what, we're probably going to have to do this again, Rafael, because we had a whole bunch of people that, had some challenges getting in as well. So we will make sure we get that out.
Well, that's what happens when you have 1,000 people on a webinar, right, Dave?
Fact. And that, whether, no matter what, if you got 1,000 people doing anything, you're going to have issues. So we really appreciate you guys joining us. And there's a bunch of great questions that we will be able to, we're going to save this chat and we'll get that to Rafael and his team. And just know that you're going to get to everybody. As long as you supplied your contact information, you will get a response and somebody will be able to help you. And I've known Rafael for years, and it, certainly if you need help and you're looking for somebody, reach out to Rafael. It's not just about the money and helping people helping people get to where you want to be. And Rafael and his team always does exactly that. And that's why he's worthy of doing business with too, right, Rafa?
We work very hard and go fight for our clients. That's why we've been in business for the years we have been, and that's why we've had success stories to this point. So
we do want to thank you for joining us. We will make sure that you get all the updated information. You will get a copy of the slides. We'll send that out as a follow-up to everybody that's registered and attended. And then anybody that indicated that you wanted help from Rafael Marrero, you will get a call very shortly and communicated with ASAP. If you need to reach out sooner, you can reach out at 888-595-6221, right, Rafael Marrero?
That's it. That's it.
That is actually a working number. It's not
That's right.
it's not a fake number.
No, we have people standing by.
We have operators standing by. Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining GovBrief, and I thank you, Rafael, for the great information.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to serving you. So please do not hesitate to ask for help and to ask for the one-on-one consultation, which again is completely free.
My
Okay?
favorite four-letter word, free.
That's it.
All right. Thanks so much, Rob. I'll be in touch in 2 minutes.
All right. Thanks.
All right, you bet.